the 1800s though, so I don't know. You might want to get that out pretty soon.
I like history here because, like, dude, you're the guy taking on Rockefeller.
Yeah,
You're a little worried about your life?
No, not too much. I think the Rockefellers kind of, I don't know. You don't see him around as much anymore.
You see him in emails.
Yeah,
you do see him in emails.
Were they in there? I've kind of.
Yeah.
You really?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Not the actual people. I haven't seen that yet, but like all the mentions of them were in the Epstein files.
I saw the Rothschilds are kind of like the orchestrator of like they kind of synced up a lot of the people. Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
You're the ESPN. What was it?
Oh, the last guy I had in was he was an ESPN basketball writer who fell into the Epstein story and went fucking bonkers 5 years ago. Okay. Wrote the greatest thing ever, this guy Henry Abbott, and no one read it at the time. And now, like, I've been shouting it out, so people are like, "Holy shit, this is a treasure trove." Mm-hmm. So that was cool.
Yeah, the Rockefellers. I mean, they're definitely they get a lot of the credit for the industrial model of education, but they built it upon, I mean, we can get into all of the origins of it, but I mean, they built upon the whole Prussian model of education, and they're still very involved. I mean, the Rockefeller, their foundation is still heavily invested into local school board meetings, trying to win local school board elections, very, very involved.
That's wild. We're going to definitely, I love the history of all this stuff too, because by the way, your documentary, awesome, man.
Oh, thanks.
It was one of those because this was a last minute podcast. So I'm like, oh, we got Spencer coming in today. Let me take a look at this real quick. I'm sitting there like this, like googly eyed, watching the whole thing. He did an amazing job. So we'll get into that. But it's funny when I have guys like you in here. I was telling you off camera, it's like a little bit full circle because I'm watching you on Impulsive in like 2018, 2019. And then like back engineering how to do all the equipment on a podcast, going off about 10 to 15 shows. Impulsive's one of them. Yeah. And now you're like, what's up, fam? We want to go on your show. Like, that's very, very cool.
Of course. Yeah, I've been watching you grow ever since too, man. It's cool to see behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's not much, right?
It's you and Joey, you're cooking in here. I love it.
That's right. I cook right there. I sleep right there.
Literally cooking, yeah.
And that's it. That's all it is. That's all it is.
That's what it's about, though. Yeah, you don't need much, man.
You don't want to.
That's so cool. I love that about the stage of journalism that we're in, and just the stage of entertainment and media that we're in. It's just getting to the point where it's so decentralized.
Yes.
And decentralization is key. I mean, we'll get into that with education, and we went down this centralized path where everything in society was moving more and more towards centralization. And, we've seen through history, it's any time we really drift into centralization of power, media, authority, schooling, it's not a good path. Doesn't end well.
I think you're right. I think the data supports that for sure. And that was what I really took from the doc as well. Like, you seem to be drawn on a lot of other themes, like obviously it's focused on the education system and how it got bastardized, but like a lot of themes outside of it that are just like, what are we doing here? But you left LA in 2019?
Yeah. Right as COVID hit.
Right.
It's like right as the fences went up on the beach in Santa Monica. I was like, I'm out.
I'm gone. It's a good call.
I bought an Airstream and just traveled the country.
You bought an Airstream.
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah. It was
balling like that.
Well, it was crazy. I mean, I had saved up from Impulsive enough to get the Airstream and just start going. And I was kind of getting a little burnt out from the LA, like influencer media space. And I wanted to do something different. So, I left, hit the road for a couple of years during COVID, and then went full-time humanitarian in 2022.
Wow. When you went on the road, where'd you go?
All over the place, a bunch of national parks. Like I went up to the Redwoods for a while. Just went up to Humboldt. Oh man, have you been?
No. I've heard great things.
Oh my gosh.
Hey guys, 3 quick things. Number 1, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's a huge, huge help. Number 2, if you'd like to join my Patreon for early uncensored releases of the full episodes, you can join via the link in my description or in the pinned comment below. And number 3, if you'd like to join my clipping community for a chance to make content from the show and make money, you can join via the Discord link in my description below.
The Redwoods will change your life. I mean, it changed my life, man. Those trees, they're biggest trees in the world.
No masks out there, right?
Masks?
You didn't have to wear
I didn't wear that. Yeah. I ditched those. It was crazy. I went to Zion National Park, and they had shut down. It was like around the time when they were telling people don't go outside, which is crazy because is like the best thing you could possibly do. Like we found going inside and being in the AC was like the worst way to spread the virus. And so I was in Zion National Park and there's supposed to be like 30,000 people and there was no one. It was a ghost, like no one. I was driving through the national park and there wasn't a single car. It was the trippiest thing I've ever experienced.
That's kind of nice though, having a place like that to yourself. It's like you're just a speck out there in the world where things are simple. You don't have 40 news stations showing death counts on the side of the screen all day. You just get in touch with the outdoors. Like, sounds simple, but it's the best medicine.
Absolutely. It made me realize how much of it was a psyop in the sense of, you know, just fear. It was all fear-based. And as information started to come out and show, you know, kids aren't as affected, and it really started to show who was really the ones that were at risk, but then they just locked everyone down. You know, it's like, that's another example of like a standardized approach, right? That was like the apex of a standardized system. Let's just throw a standardized solution at this problem. And we see, especially with education, oh my gosh, man, it's disastrous what happened because of COVID with schooling. I mean, kids are still not recovered pre-pandemic academics. Like they're still, 2 years behind. Yeah. And then you have the CDC reported 1 out of every 5 kids thought about killing themselves in 2023.
1 out of 5.
1 out of 5. Which is just
like, and that's like any kids, like what, like 10 to 18 or maybe in that area?
Yeah, it was like middle school, high school range, I believe, the study. There's like over 40% of kids right now are experiencing extreme feelings of sadness or hopelessness. So it's just, we're living through right now a cataclysmic moment with mental health. Absolutely cataclysmic.
What made you, obviously you have this experience like a lot of us did where we see the pandemic as ass backwards. You get out in nature, you see it's really ass backwards once you're out there. But like you said, there's this whole theme of like, you know, centralization is causing all these problems, but then you end up honing in on the school system and particularly to do this documentary. What made you choose that?
Well, I was getting a ton of backlash online because I was just, I'd got COVID very early and I was like, okay, that wasn't that bad. I was trying to be compassionate to, other people. But then I started to realize, to what end? And I lost 80,000 followers because I was speaking out about the vaccine mandates. I was speaking out against when they started saying it's safe and effective. So I grew up in Michigan and we grew up near Upjohn, which was bought by Pfizer. And they had that was back in like 2009 when they had that huge $2 billion, it was like the largest criminal settlement from a pharmaceutical company up to that point. Wow. I think it was 2009.
Yeah.
And so they were lying about some of their medications and some of their products. And so that was like, we had that in the back of our mind because we grew up, Michigan is like a lot of pharmaceutical companies there. You have like Stryker Medical, you had Pfizer.
Yeah, Michigan and right here in Jersey. They're all like a half hour away. Oh, yeah. All of them. Dave Scott, Justice Department announces largest healthcare fraud settlement in history. Pfizer to pay $2.3 billion for fraudulent marketing. This is from September 2009. Spot on. Wow.
So I had that in the back of my mind. And so when they came out and they're like, hey, Pfizer, we created this vaccine. It's 100% safe and effective. Instantly in my mind, I was like, that's I just called it. And so I was putting that out online. I was like, this is complete. There's no chance. Just use common sense. Look at their data and their studies. It was a joke. But you look at, just use common sense. You cannot do a long-term study on a product that just came out, right? So I was like, I don't know. I think this is gonna backfire. I think people that are gonna get this are probably going to get regretted. And then they started like pushing, people to get the vaccine or else you're gonna lose your job and all these things that were just unconstitutional. So I saw all that. But to answer your question, that was going on. I was getting just an insane amount of negative backlash online. And so I was like, you know what, let me just like focus on editing my film. And I'd been working on it for, it took me a decade to make this film.
The one you just put out.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So this was on your mind for a long time.
It was. And so I
you.
finally just locked in. I was like, you know what? Let me just lock in on this edit. Let me stop focusing on social media and just get this done.
How did you end up in Hollywood in the first place, or out in LA, I should say? Because you were there for a little while, right?
Yeah. I moved out there like pretty much right after college. I was working with a guy named Bob Proctor in Toronto.
Okay.
He was in The Secret, the documentary The Secret, the
yeah.
old guy with white hair, all law of attraction.
I don't know if that's clicking, but I know The Secret.
Yeah. He was an OG, and so I was working with him in Toronto, and it was a great job. I could work remote, so I just moved to LA, and I was like learning about mindset, how to use your mind, manifestation, all those things, and then I was out in LA and met Jake Paul. A mutual friend connected to me to Jake, and this is before he started his YouTube channel or anything. I think.
How old was he?
Young, maybe 17.
Oh wow,
18 maybe, somewhere in there. And so we linked up. We did a video shoot in Arizona, and then came back to LA, and he just needed help on video, so I started helping him like with the original Team 10 people.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep.
That was who else was
New
in
Hollywood?
Justin Roberts. Was he in that?
I think Justin was, yeah.
Who the hell else?
The Dobre twins, my buddy Cade, Alyssa Violet.
There's another girl I'm thinking of that I can't put her name right now. It's gonna kill me.
There was a lot. A lot of people coming in and out.
Yeah,
it was all
OG
New Hollywood.
days.
It was cool. It was like, old Hollywood hated it. Like they were pissed. So any chance they could like kind of try to tamp us down, they did, but it was cool.
Didn't work.
No.
Didn't work. Digital world was going to happen,
Yeah.
like it or not. It's just, I never been out there, and people love talking about Hollywood with everything. It comes up all the time. But like, I feel like they put a veil over the whole thing and make it all one thing. And I know it can't be like that. That said, within there somewhere, there's a weird dark undercurrent of, I think it's probably, looking at this from the outside, a combination of people who are just craving fame at all costs, and then the gatekeepers who can kind of control that, even in the digital world sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That like, it's why so many people online now from the outside look at it and go, damn, seems dark. Did you have any of that type of experience there at all? If you listen to the podcast, you know that I love to walk absolutely everywhere. That includes when it is freezing cold in the winters here in Hoboken, New Jersey. And this past winter, we got particularly rocked with a lot of snowstorms, and it was particularly cold every single day. But you know why my feet were good to go for the long walks in the freezing cold and the snow? Because I have Hollow Socks. Many of you spend a ton on shoes, but cut corners on the things that go between your feet and the shoes itself, your socks. When it's cold out, your feet are freezing. And when it's warm, they turn into a sauna. Regular socks basically guarantee that your feet are going to feel wrong no matter what the weather is. Synthetic fibers, cotton, even wool, they never seem to hold up to their promises. But that's where Hollow Socks comes in. Hollow Socks are premium alpaca socks, built for both cold and warm weather, long days on your feet, and everything in between. Their ultra soft baby alpaca fiber brings you a how is this legal level of comfort. Hollow Socks are also thermoregulating, which means they're warm when it's cold outside and breathable when it's warm. They're great with moisture managing, and they're also odorless. This is because alpaca fibers make bacterial growth difficult, which reduces the root cause of most foot odor. You can wear these things on the job, doing yard work, hiking, walking outside, lounging around the house, in your office, you name it. They're comfortable everywhere. And right now, for a limited time, Hollow Socks is having a buy two, get two free sale. So head on over to hollowsocks.com, link in my description below, and check it out. That's hollowsocks.com for up to 50% off your first order, link in my description below. And after you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you.
Little bits and pieces, I would see some stuff, but we were in New Hollywood. We weren't dealing with the gatekeepers. We were like bypassing all of that. So we kind of had the benefit of being near all the celebrities and near that culture. But I did hear of like some really weird things. Like there was definitely some influencers. I'm not going to name names, but they would like get pulled into like sex parties and, that kind of stuff. So, and I would hear some messed up stuff with, like Nickelodeon, videographers would also work on like in the porn industry and like weird crossovers like that. So,
yeah.
But I stayed clear of all that. I was like, I'm just going to focus on YouTube videos and working with influencers.
Good move. Yeah, those Nickelodeon documentaries were crazy, bro.
Yeah.
Did
I didn't
you
get
see
invited
those?
to Bohemian Grove, so
That's good.
yeah.
That's good. So you're checked off.
Yeah,
You'd have like a brand on you or something.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not gonna make you strip later
No.
to check, so don't worry. It's okay. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be, as a videographer coming up, you know, that's the golden era, to come up with people who were basically like trailblazing, including like the kind of stuff that we do here, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, what an era.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I got to, like, we had Mr. Beast on before he even was popping on YouTube. He had done a video where he said Logan Paul like 100,000 times.
Yeah.
And so we had him on the podcast, and he came on, and it was just like, to see him get to where he's at now from that, it was just like, what?
Could you see that though? Like when he's young and you're bringing him on because he did that video, could you kind of see like, this dude he don't give up?
I saw his mindset. I couldn't fathom it being as big as it is now. No chance.
Yeah.
It's
kind of, he's built a fucking empire.
Big time.
He's a personal business.
Big time.
He's like a Fortune 50 company.
Yeah.
Never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
But you decide to get out in 2019,
Yep.
go off, spend some time in the Redwoods. You're
Mhm.
working on this documentary
Mhm.
the whole time. So you're out there, and then you're like, I'm going to hone in on this, and I'm going to break down the system. So where do you even begin with this? Because people would float around theories about what the real education system is online. And I remember like 7-8 years ago, I'm like, there's no way that's real. And then, like, kind of like you get into the pandemic and you're like, maybe there's something to that.
Yeah.
You know, maybe this worker bee thing is real. Like, obviously you had that moment even earlier than I did, but like, how do you even unravel that? Do you just go to the start and be like, well, John D. Rockefeller, anyway, let's go? Or is it more that we don't even know about?
Well, for me, it started from my personal experience within public education. I was always kind of questioning things, because from 5th grade going into 6th grade, our school got rid of recess.
They got rid of it.
Rid of it completely. And which is common for schools. Did you go to a public school?
No,
Okay.
I went to a private school.
So you had recess the whole time?
Until middle school. Until the end of middle school.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got it in middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just started running into a lot of issues within school with authority. You know, it just felt like it was just this experience where I was trying to be molded and shaped, and it was about conformity and obedience and just following orders. Kind of like, you know, I was really passionate about film, but school didn't seem to really care about my gifts. It was like, nope, focus on these tests. So that kind of planted the seed. I was always questioning it in the back of my mind. And then I went to college, got in a bunch of debt. I ended up dropping out my senior year, still had the debt to pay off. But I got a really good job, and I just found success outside of the system, outside of the traditional curve. So it made me start to question things. And then, like I told you, I was working with Bob Proctor, and that was the first time that I actually heard the definition of education, like what it actually meant. And that really, like, a light bulb went off. So the word education comes from the Latin word educo, which means to draw out from or to develop from within. And when I was looking back on the traditional public education system, I was like, it's kind of the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It's like, let's force information in. But education in itself is, hey, we're born with gifts. We have these gifts when we come here. Education is a process of bringing those out and sharing them with the world. Like, that's what education actually means. So then I started to realize, okay, there's a difference between schooling and education. And I'm just like I've always been a curious kid and a curious person. So I just started asking questions just like yourself, like, hey, let's look into this. Like, how did we get here? And that's when I started learning about, you know, the Committee of 10 in 1892 and the General Education Board founded by Rockefeller in 1902. And
who was the Committee of 10?
The Committee of 10 was the NEA. The NEA is now the largest labor union in the country. You saw in the film, I go undercover in the NEA. But the NEA they're the architects of the American education system. They created standards. They created the standardized curriculum, and they enforced that. I think it dates back, to 1857, if I'm not mistaken?
Jesus Christ, pre-Civil War?
Yeah, they've been here for a hot minute.
Dude.
And how they kind of rose up is in 1852 is when the U.S. has its very first compulsory schooling law. Meaning
in English, yeah.
Meaning you have to send your kids to the public school. So before 1850s, education was decentralized. It was widely homeschool. It was religious schools, and there was no government oversight. You know, the word education isn't even mentioned in the Constitution. So we didn't have a Department of Education. We had no centralization of education whatsoever.
Oh, I didn't know. I actually had no idea about that until you said that. It's not in there at all.
Yeah, no. I'm going to do another film and dive into more of the deeper stuff.
Yeah.
The Death of Recess, I really focused on kind of the Industrial Revolution, but the origin story goes back for sure. Yeah.
You can give us a preview today too if you want.
I'm down. I'm
good with that.
I'm not gatekeeping anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in 1852, well, I think if you understand the history, it's really empowering because you start to look around. You're like, oh, this all makes sense. This is like how it all happened. But it all started from a guy named Horace Mann. He's the father of education. He's known as the father of American education. And Horace Mann, he was the very first Secretary of Education in the U.S. in Massachusetts. So just for some context, yeah, there he is. There's Horace. So just for context.
He looks like an asshole.
He's got a pretty wild story. He was very aggressive at going against the religious kind of like up until this point, the clergy, like the church, had really kind of run education. Like school was just an extension of the church. And he was very much against that. Because he had a pretty bad experience. I think when I want to say he was like 11 years old, his brother died while swimming in a river on Sunday. And at the funeral, the priest pulled up and was like, oh, he's in hell.
What?
He went to hell because he was not supposed to be swimming on the Sabbath. God. So definitely had some religious trauma. Yeah, that'll piss you off. So that messed with him big time. And that was kind of like the inspiration for him to really attack the church's dominance on school. So in I believe it was 1843, he went to Prussia. So this is after he became the Secretary of Education in Massachusetts. He had orchestrated this common school movement, which was really like the first public schools. And normal schools. Normal schools were like teacher training schools. So this is where teachers were trained. He believed that education, it should be like parents, they're not really knowledgeable on education. They don't really know. Like the state should be the father of the child. And this was heavily opposed by the founding fathers. Like heavily opposed. Right, you had like Thomas Jefferson, you had, I think it was like Benjamin Rush, John Adams, like some of those OG founding fathers were like the child should be up to the parent. This new idea starts to emerge in the 1830s with the common school movement where it's like, hey, actually let's train teachers, let's make them state certified, and then they're more equipped to teach, right? So it's all about like civic literacy and preparing kids for the Industrial Revolution, like creating workers. But still up to this point, schooling is not mandatory. It's not compulsory. So it's in 1840, when he went to Prussia, I believe it was 1843. And he goes to Prussia, he's with his wife on his honeymoon, and he sees the Prussian system. It's like modern day, Germany area. And it's the Prussian Empire was like the U.S. empire of the world.
They helped us I think they were on both sides of the Revolutionary War, actually. But yeah, like they were known as, they would send military mercenaries around the world.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Very forgotten little empire that existed for sure.
Yeah. And they came to be, I don't know if you want to get into the origins of the Prussian Empire, but the king of Prussia, so Napoleon came in and basically kicked their ass in the Battle of Haina, and I think it was like 1806 or something like that. And the Prussians got their asses beat, and the king, in response to this, is like, "Yo, we need a centralized school system that's going to create obedient people that are going to follow orders, and we need a unified military because we got our asses beat." And everybody was just kind of like independent thought and just doing their own thing. And so they created this just insanely, strict regimented education system, centralized. It's where the bells come from. Like you ring the bell, kids go from one class to the next, standardized curriculum. Everybody's learning the same thing. Students went through, they didn't learn lessons, they learned drills. Like it was all about literally drilling information into these kids.
It's like the fucking Unsullied army
Yeah.
in Game of Thrones.
You're right,
It's
right.
just like follow orders and kill.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Just obey.
Yes.
And so Horace Mann goes there and sees, wow, this centralized education system has really created this powerful empire. Because the Prussian system, because of their education system, became very powerful. They became like the world empire because of that. And so when he was there, and multiple other reformers from America traveled and they checked it out, and they're like, we should do this. Like, this is how we should do it. And so Horace Mann comes back to the U.S., and then that's when, by 1852, we implement the compulsory schooling laws. That's the very first compulsory education law that exactly mirrored the Prussian model. So he lobbied to bring Prussian education to Massachusetts.
So that was what I was going to ask. He was a lobbyist or something like that, effectively?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was the Secretary of Education. And
you know what's so fascinating about that, though? It's another example of like, you have something very broken. In this case, he was looking at a system where, well, the churches are just controlling it and indoctrinating people according to their religious needs. And as a constitutionalist, which is where he starts, separation of church and state should also mean separation of education. That's something a lot of people could say, all right, that makes sense. But then he goes completely the opposite way and says, not only that, but the state's going to control it. And it's like, you have the equal but opposite reaction. Like, I just want the fucking equilibrium right here. You know what I mean? Like choice, let parents control the situation and not have any indoctrination happen.
Yeah.
You know?
And thankfully, that's kind of what's emerging right now, especially because of the pandemic. But just to give you a little snapshot, from 1852 up until 1918, I believe Mississippi was the final state to get compulsory education. But from 1852 to 1970, we effectively went from probably about 95 to 99% of the country was decentralized education, primarily homeschooled. To 1970, you have about 12,000 kids in the entire country are homeschooled.
Whoa.
So we literally flipped upside down. It's kind of like, people living on the farm to living in the city, right? The Industrial Revolution just changed society night and day.
Yes.
It removed kids from the household. It removed fathers from the household. It put mothers to work. I mean, it just completely separated the nuclear family that, the Commonwealth and the early United States was built upon.
Do you think that was the point?
That was the intention. It seems that way.
Yeah.
It seems that way. How about your thoughts?
I think it very well could be. Looking at it now, there's so many things I would have thought, like I said, like take for granted 7-8 years ago, that now I'm looking at it and I just see the mountain of evidence on both sides, and I'm like, wait a minute, there's a lot more over here. If you ever watch like that old docu with some actors in it, whatever the hell they call that series, Men Who Build America. You ever see that?
No.
It's about all these guys. Starts with Vanderbilt. Great series, by the way. It's back in 2015. Starts with Vanderbilt, goes to like Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller. I think Henry Ford is covered as well. And, it's kind of like showing you all the amazing business achievements these guys had, which certainly they did. But what you're not seeing is kind of the trampling undercurrent of people that they're trampling over 100%. To get to that point. And you wonder if there's like that, I always think about this, if there's that crossing point where someone one day, they started somewhere, you're John Rockefeller, you started as a Christian guy and you found some oil. And then suddenly you're like, oh, fuck, we got a lot of oil. And one day you're looking around the mines or at the oil fields and you're like, you know what? I'm above all these people. And you don't say it like that, but your mind goes, shoop, and now you're that guy, and now it affects every decision you made. Do you think that's
I think
possible?
That's exactly what happened, yeah. There's evidence of that, big time. I mean, Rockefeller had, I believe, 80 to 90% of the U.S.'s oil refining capabilities. And there's examples where there was worker protests, and then he would buy like local newspapers in I don't remember where it was, but he bought like some local newspaper because I think his forces like killed like 20 some workers because they were protesting against the Rockefeller oil monopoly.
Killed him.
Yeah, they killed him.
Those were the good old days. You could just kill
Yeah, you could
people.
just kill off
Jesus
the
Christ.
dissenting force.
Wow.
I don't remember where that was, but yeah, he had a Loctite grip on things, and clearly was about power. Clearly was about, building his industry and his grip.
Yep, there it is. You're right again. The events described refer to the Ludlow Massacre of April 20th, 1914, when the Rockefeller-owned Colorado Fuel and Iron Company Guards and the Colorado National Guard, well, at least they were teammates together, You want to kill together, I guess.
Yeah.
Attacked a tent colony of striking miners and their families. Wow. Approximately 21 people were killed, including miners, their wives, and children.
And then I think he bought the local newspaper, right? To like cover it up.
That's so sinister, man.
So, yeah, I think in order to get to that level of power, you're definitely not thinking about the commonwealth, right? Like sharing, right?
Yeah.
Some of those Christian family values of like treating your neighbor as you would treat yourself, right? So that's where I think religion became a threat for a lot of these powerful elites, because the religion, for its flaws, like any system has, what it did have working very well was a strong family unit.
Yes.
It was keeping, the biblical order is, kind of undeniable, right? And you see that under attack in our society, now more than ever, with confusion over so many different genders, and, we're removing women from the house, sending kids to daycare, women are going to work, men are going to work. And I'm not trying to vilify anything, but when you look back at how it used to be,
yes,
it's very different. It's night and day different today than it was when our, ancestors were first here.
Yeah, it's an incentive structure too. And that's what's really tough about it. What I mean by that is when people have to make a financial decision as to whether or not to have a fucking kid. One, the system's broken. And you point out so many of these great themes that we'll talk about in your documentary that have happened that are just like, whoa, like how the fuck did we get here? But what you're doing now explaining this history is it's really just slowly, program, all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. And that it feels like that's where we're at. And if I could be positive for a minute, it also feels like there's, and in a good way, an inordinate number of people who are actually now like, whoa, tuned into this going, wait a minute, politics aside, everything aside, just like this is, you come after kids, you come after, this perfect thing that's brought into the world and you try to beat it down from day one, that's a red line for us. And now we can see it. They couldn't, you think they knew Horace Mann was going around Prussia and being like, well, this seems like it works, I'll bring that back. No.
Yeah.
You didn't, what were you getting, your newspaper by a horse back then?
Yeah.
They
had no idea what it was going to become. And yeah, to your point, first, it's, because of the COVID pandemic, we had 1.5 million families pull their kids out of the public school system. And those numbers have maintained.
Wow.
And we're projected to see another 5% decrease over the coming years. So you're 100% spot on. Parents are waking up and they're realizing, maybe I don't want the government to raise my kids. Maybe I should take control of that. And we're starting to kind of see through the propaganda of, homeschool kids are weird, and all these different propaganda methods that were used to scare people away from homeschooling.
Yes.
Think about this. So in New York, actually, 1852, that first compulsory schooling law. In 1853, they start enforcing it. Anywhere you had to enforce it, right? Because people weren't really sending their kids to schools. So in New York, there's this story where what they did is they had attendance officers. So they'd have these guys, like probably like a Navy SEAL type dude, go knock on people's doors. And there's one case where a guy he went to 6,000 houses and he brought 128 families to court that were refusing to go to the school. And they would face a $50 fine if
back
they
then.
didn't, back then, which is like $2,100 today.
Yeah.
So that was what was going on. They literally made homeschooling your own kid, right? Raising your own kid illegal in the United States. They made it illegal.
175 years ago.
Yeah. And we're recovering from that right now. So that's the mass awakening, right? The shift that I'm trying to help people understand is if you can take control of your child, if you could take control of raising your children, that's the most powerful thing you can do for the system, right? We see everything going on with the Epstein and, left and right. You see grooming from the left too, in the education system. You see it in the film. It doesn't matter. It's two wings of the same bird. They, like you said, it's this federal centralized power that's the threat here. You look at our taxation, in like 1776, I think the average person in the Commonwealth was paying like 1 or 1.5% taxes. Today, the average person's paying 25 to 30%.
Don't tell Tommy G that. He's going to have another fucking freak out. 1.5%?
Yeah. Yeah, 1 to 1.5%. I mean,
Come
think about it.
Homeless people for that. Yeah, they're like, give us 3%, Malaka. Let's go.
Exactly.
Oh my god.
I mean, think about the Boston Tea Party was over like 3% tax on goods, and it was about taxation without representations. That shows the spirit that we have cooked into us, is that we are strongly against centralized authority. But we've just been duped. We've been duped into just we all go to public schools. Let's tear apart the family. Let's just go through this system. Let's just obey authority. That's why we see all these crazy things happening in the world. So that's why when I look at what's going on in the world, I'm like, I'm not that surprised. I understand why. I understand how we got here.
All over the world, though, too.
Big time. Yeah.
Why all over the world? Because we've been talking about America, obviously, but other places as well. What makes you say that?
In terms of
like
chaos?
Why the chaos happens and why it's explainable.
I mean, you see the same thing with the Soviet Union. They centralized authority, they centralized education, and so it doesn't matter if it's a communist country, if it's a capitalist country. The moment you centralize and you have state sanctioned or government sanctioned education, I think the moment the Soviet Union took control of education, it was 70 years until they collapsed. The moment that Nazi Germany mandated the Nazi takeover of the Prussian system. I think it was like 1939, the like Nazi education law. We're talking 5-6 years until they fall. So you see that kind of common trend. It's like as soon as you have a centralized authority come and try to capture a system, that's what I was saying. It doesn't lead to really great outcomes. Decentralization is always better. So we're seeing a rise of that kind of all throughout the world.
What happens when you hit him in other ways, though? Like you're talking about the education system, which should, of course, be top of mind. But again, your documentary also points out all these other things that are going on. Just some off the top of my head. You have the most powerful lobbies like Big Pharma, who are normalizing fucking SSRIs if some kid has a boo-boo, and telling families it's okay. You have obviously within the schools, like the teaching systems, which are corrupted, and we'll talk about that more later too. You have a society that you correctly point out had kids lose legitimately 2 years of social and interpersonal and true educational schooling in a way for whatever even that was worth because of the pandemic. And like, it's easy for us to think about how much that affects, kindergartners through fifth graders, but I don't even buy that. I think if you were in any level of school from preschool through college and you lost 2 years, we have Andreas sitting here who basically lost his senior year of college and senior year of high school, freshman year of college.
Junior, senior year, and then freshman year of college.
Yeah, there you go. So like, there's no way that maybe certain individuals are resilient, you seem to be, and like it works out, but on a percentage basis, if you have your fingers on the strings like you're the puppet master and you're like, I just need to make sure that I kill off the spirit of 33% of society. You're going to be able to do it if you're costing 2 years across all those different age groups. This is a generational fucking moment, that they got a whole generation all at once. How does that reverberate now in the next generation, the generation after that, when that generation is coming into power in the workforce and then has power in the workforce? Do they even have it, or were their balls cut off?
Yeah, education. I mean, there's so many parasitic forces that have identified education for what it is. It's the schooling system is incredibly powerful opportunity to capture the minds of youth. Whoever controls education, whoever controls the curriculum, whoever has authority over what's taught, how it's taught, what's not taught, they can control that generation. So that's why education is front and center. It is front and center. And it's the thing that we don't really talk about that often. It's kind of this like, let's brush that. Let's kick that down the road, you know. That's like a background topic. But it's front and center. Like you said, there's so many different parasitic forces that I think it's kind of like an opportunistic, you know, energy that is feeding off the system with the pharmaceutical industry. That's a perfect example, you know. You industrialize the food supply, you industrialize the education system. So kids are going there, they're eating all this, you know, processed food. So they're getting hooked on processed foods. They're getting hit with glyphosate, atrazine, chemicals that are actually literally altering their hormones. They're sitting inside, you know, fluorescent lighting all day. You remove recess from 1950. We had about 2 hours a day of recess in the US.
2 hours.
In 1950. To today, we have 25 minutes.
That's crazy.
Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
So,
by the way, you keep picking on public schools, righteously so. But like, I think this is absolutely infected most private schools as well. I don't really view it as any different at all. And I don't want to demonize the systems themselves, like the people that try to do the right thing within it. It's a system that's been brainwashed on all of us, including the people who are actually sending their kids to get educated there. You know what I mean? There's bad actors in anything, and you've certainly pointed out some, but like, you know, I think about the classrooms and how they're set up. It's like, that's not for creativity. I mean, you talked about it. You said you were growing up, you knew very early you were a creative guy, and you felt, if I'm putting words in your mouth, I apologize, but you felt like kind of cramped in by it, right?
Yeah.
It seems like that would be pretty much any creative kid going to school these days.
Yeah, and thankfully now, on a positive note, we have all this neuroscience, brain science that really shows how beneficial outdoor time is. It shows how much we can even drink in information. Like, we're seeing that it's really only productive to have a 2-hour window of academics per day.
2 hours.
About 2 hours is the most effective. And then we're seeing that recess is more than just a break. We're seeing multiple different bits of research coming out. There's the Link project in Texas Christian University. And then you have Colorado Boulder did a study. So they found that schools that implemented 60 minutes of recess, kids scored 10% higher on standardized tests. And I sat down with the head of the NIH, the National Institute of Health. That he was there for 30 years, and he let me in on all the brain science. And he was like, you know, it's actually in the time in between when you take breaks from something where your brain is learning. It's actually formulated. Like, you know, if you're a musician or if you're a boxer, right? You know, you can't just box all day and get better. You have to take a break. You have to recover, right? Recovery is arguably just as important as the workout itself.
100%.
Possibly more, you know?
Yep.
So that's the same thing with recess. What we're learning is it's like there's this substance in the brain called myelin. It's like white matter. So we're seeing all these studies coming out about kids that are spending too much time on screens. They're losing white matter. I think they just put out a study that showed kids preschool that spend 2 hours per day on their screens are showing a decrease in white matter in the brain. So the way you increase white matter, this is the good news, is outdoor play, unstructured outdoor play.
100%.
And taking breaks, because the myelin, so you have neural pathways forming, and the myelin is like imagine it as like duct tape that's like wrapped around these neural pathways to help solidify it. So we're seeing all this research coming out, and yeah, we're seeing that the actual structure of schooling is detrimental to learning. Has nothing. I mean, you're waking kids up really early, and then you're again sending them to school. A lot of these campuses are locked down because of school shooters, you know, issues with safety.
That's another thing, yeah.
We started hitting that. I'm sure you were on the same boat when we were going through high school. We had to start doing all those drills, and so you're dealing. You know, kids are dealing with that psychologically, and yeah, the whole structure of education, right? The bell rings, you go from room to room. That's still Prussian education. The whole curriculum being standardized, everybody's taking the same test. You know, that's why when I went to Finland, which is, I would say, it's the best education system in the world. It's like night and day different. Finland, for a few different reasons, and I'll get into the irony of it, but Finland does the most amount of time of recess anywhere in the world. They have the most recess out of any nation in the whole entire world. Yet their kids are scoring at the top in standardized tests. I mean, they're competing with China, who spends an ungodly amount of time forcing kids into academics and testing.
The one benefit of communism is they sit the fuck down.
Yeah. The one
Daddy
benefit
won't
is
get shot.
You can get some stuff done. So
I
Finland,
don't like communism.
yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, I think the FBI might have heard that.
Yeah. They're like, oh, got one.
So Finland, they don't give any homework to kids.
No homework at
No
all.
homework. They don't give kids any grades until 8th grade. No like letter grades or any of that stuff. So it's really about letting kids be kids.
What's the benefit of not giving out grades until so late?
Are you ready for the red pill?
Well, I don't care what the fucking
Red or
pill
blue
is. I'll
pill?
take it. Let's go.
So grades were created to measure conformity. So the higher the grade, the more conforming the individual. So
Who invented grades?
I think this comes back to the Prussian system, if I'm not mistaken.
All right, let's look that up.
But Carol Dweck, she's one of the, she's a researcher from Stanford. She's a psychologist. She's one of the leading psychologists in the world. And I interviewed her in the film. And they did this experiment in the Bronx, actually, and in Chicago. And they went to the lowest performing test score districts in those cities. And she found this grading scale. Instead of the traditional grading scale, they just threw it out. And they're like, let's try yet or not yet. Those are the two options. You either got it or you didn't get it yet. And what they found is that if you have, they measured kids with brain scans, kids that went through the traditional education grading system, when they were given a problem, they were pretty much brain dead. They had no brain activity. So they had a fixed mindset. That's what Carol Dweck came up with. And then when you had kids going through the yet or not yet system, when you gave them a problem, their brain was alive. Because they weren't labeled, right? They didn't have, oh, I got a D. I'm a D student. They got, I didn't get it yet. Oh, let me keep trying. Let me try again.
It's like in a video game when you can come back to life.
Exactly.
You fuck up a level, it's like, all right, I can try this again.
Yeah, let's run it back.
Wow.
So that's what happened with these kids. And so in the Bronx and in Chicago, these districts that tried the yet or not yet system shot to the top. They were literally the best the next year at standardized testing.
When was that?
That'd be a good one to pull up.
Not that long ago, though, right?
Maybe a couple decades ago. But
what?
Here's the crazy part. This will blow your mind. The Finnish education system, they saw that research and they adopted it. So they were performing very mid or low mid in education, and they shot to the top. So when I went there, they literally were like, telling me, yeah, I tell people if you want to live the American dream, move to Finland. Because they literally based their entire system off of our research.
Now, why didn't we see this research?
That's a great question.
That's what I want to know.
I'm still asking that question. I don't know. I don't understand it. If you look at all the brain science, if you look at all the research, it makes sense to give kids the maximum amount of time to outdoor exposure and the least amount of time on tests. In Finland, they give kids one standardized test. In the United States, we have 112 from K through 12.
112?
112. So and Finland has ranked, I believe, the last 8 or 9 years as the happiest country on earth. So
Something to that. Something for
there.
sure. Yeah.
there's something there.
How many people live in Finland? I don't expect you to know that. Can we look that up, Steve?
I want to say it's like 9 or 10 million. It's like
Yeah, it's not 2 people.
5.6.
5.6, yeah. Sizable country. Obviously not America, but like that is really, really interesting.
Yeah. And I'm not advocating. I mean, we don't need to like copy and paste every bit of their system, but
I
we should
understand.
probably listen to the research that we did.
Yeah, when I look back on it though, so I think there were parts of my education that were really good. I actually don't have a complaint about college, and I think I'm really lucky with that. I understand why a lot of people have complaints about college these days, but I kind of lucked out with that. But then there's parts of when I was growing up where I'm like, that school wasn't as good, that system wasn't as good. This was okay, like kind of a mixed bag. I thought high school was decent, but you're not thinking about these things at all as a kid, because that's not your job to. Your job is to do, this is going to sound really bad to say, but like go where you're supposed to go. And, you know, your parents and the system kind of guide you with that. But looking back on it, I'm not one of these people that's like, well, we should just let the kids tell us whatever they want to do, and we'll just sit back and say, okay, it doesn't need to be like that. But it's also not like, sit the fuck down, Johnny, like we're doing math right now because I said so. There needs to be a balance. So is the balance also putting recess throughout the day? I, for one, think that makes a ton of sense. You mean getting a kid's fucking blood flowing outside, being healthy without a fucking screen, that helps? Oh my God, what an original idea. But then throughout the day, let's say you are going to stay with a day that's 8:30 to 2:30 or something like that. And you're going to say, okay, we're not going to throw out the fact that they're there at that point. Maybe they have to wake up a little too early for that than a kid should. But like the idea, if we had to keep that in place, how would we perfect it? We'd perfect it by putting more recess in. And then also for me, and I don't want to oversimplify this, I just love your thoughts, I would kind of separate creativity with baseline learning. And what I mean by that is, yeah, if a kid doesn't like math, you still got to teach them math, right? If a kid doesn't like reading at first, you still got to teach them reading, but you can find a way to make that fun or more interactive. And maybe that starts, we can talk about with the design of the rooms for one thing. But then when it comes to like art or anything that is a pure creative expression, let the kid tell you what they want to do. If the kid wants to learn to play the piano, don't say, all right, bitch, you got to do Scherzo number 9. No, if they want to play All the Lights by Kanye West, fucking let them play. You know what I mean? Like there has to be that expression where it's like, all right, you have your space to do that. And I think you would actually get a kid who's more well-behaved if they were allowed to do what they wanted to do if it was fun, right?
Yeah, and all of the neuroscience points to exactly that if you have motivated kids, if you have an interest in what you're learning happens automatically.
Right.
Automatically. And, you know, so I went to a lot of different schools in the film that I believe are doing it right and are crushing it. Alpha School in Austin is one of them that's incredible. They're spreading all over the country. I went down to Mexico and
Alpha School?
Yeah, Alpha School.
Can we pull that up, Steve?
Mackenzie Price. She's crushing it. And they kind of, I feel like they kind of have it figured out because they've got, I mean, their kids are crushing it in academics. They only focus 2 hours per day on academics. And then the rest of it is those, like you said, those soft skills, like the public speaking, you know, life skills.
Yes.
Right? Like just learning about how to life.
Yeah.
Which is probably the most important stuff. And our school system today does not really prioritize life skills because they're so saturated with forcing this. And this is not the fault of teachers. I want to make that clear. I'm a huge fan of teachers. And I think teachers are being shackled to an old system and we're not letting them actually teach. Where, you know, and that's from the No Child Left Behind bill and the Every Student Succeed Act, where we actually really like held them to the fire and made their pay based on their students' performance on these tests. That's one of the most, that's the thing that we just got to get that out ASAP. But we're dealing with this kind of these artifacts of our leadership is just, they just aren't, it's not clicking for some reason. I'm not sure. I'm working on it. We're going to, you know, meet with the Heritage Foundation in June and we are trying to like get this in front of policymakers and show them the film and just like, maybe this can spark that awareness, you know, and help people see it. I feel like once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's how it happened with me. Once I saw all the data, saw all the research, saw what we're actually doing, I was like, this just seems so obvious.
Yeah.
But Alpha School is a great example. I mean, they're a private school. She is fighting to get into charter schools but it's just so,
all the time.
Well, it's so gate kept.
Yeah.
You know, the State Board of Education, it's like something new and innovative comes by and it threatens all of their money. It threatens all of their donors. It threatens the textbook monopolies. It threatens the curriculum monopolies. And so they're like, no, stay out. So that's why a lot of the innovation that's happening within education in America, it's like, it's just happening in those charter schools and or, you know, more so in the private schools. And it's kind of only for people that have money. So that's why I'm like, we got to bring this to everyone. We got to get this into the public schools.
I met so many impressive kids from charter schools over the years. So many impressive ones. And I met some from charter schools where it's like expense is not an issue, which I should know that. I don't even know how that works in some of these. I should ask that question. But like, you know, they're not paying 15 grand a year to go there or whatever, like maybe they're selected to go in there or they apply and there's some sort of funding that actually goes to it. I know there was a fight about that and continues to be in the government. And it's like, you know, probably the thing that stood out about just thinking of the kids I know who went to charter school the most is that the interpersonal skills were tremendous. So maybe they're kind of teaching that or letting them learn that.
Yeah, well, charter school is essentially a private school that has access to state money. So it makes basically like a private education. Like that school can run it however they want. They don't have to stick to the government state standards, but they can still get state funding. That's what a charter school is. Private school, they don't have any state funding.
Right.
Public school, it's 100% state funded. So just to kind of give you like a ballpark idea of how this all works, is imagine like every single one of us, like imagine like a stereotypical American kid, they're worth about $20,000 per year to the system. So depending on where they go, that's where that $20,000 goes. It varies by state, right? Some states are more expensive, some states are less. I'm just giving like kind of an average $20,000. That's, you know, what they're worth. And so it's all based on attendance. Right. So this is why you have this huge battle right now. The battle in American education is school of choice. And there are entities that are fighting like hell to prevent school of choice, mainly the NEA, the ones who created the whole system. So the NEA, they were the architects of the whole standardized education. Now they get paid based on attendance, right? So what's the last thing you want? You don't want those kids going somewhere else, or else you lose that $20,000 per head, right? So they're fighting to ban and, you know, keep school of choice out. But school of choice is gaining serious momentum right now. I think we have like 18 states under Trump's. I think that one of the good things that the Trump administration is doing is school of choice. And they're rolling that out. So parents have the choice to send their kids to charter schools or alternative schools.
Now, is it getting there? Is it getting anywhere this time around? Because like to their credit, I remember Trump pushing that like on the campaign trail in 2015, 2016 as well. And then not a ton happened. Like, are they making progress now because of the pandemic, maybe?
The pandemic. Yeah, they are. They're making serious headway because the pandemic just kind of broke everything. What the pandemic did is the teachers union stepped on a rake because they fought to keep the schools shut. And we knew COVID wasn't really affecting kids the same. So like the smart thing to do was to open schools, and they lobbied to keep it shut. And the schools stayed shut an extra year because of the teacher unions, because they lobbied. So what happened is they were still getting federal funding. So they were all getting paid. They just didn't have to go to work. They could work from home. And what happened, which is the like benefit of that, is it brought the classroom into the home. And so parents saw what their kids were being taught. They're like, what?
What the fuck is this shit?
Right? What the fuck is going on? Or what, like the lack of what is not being taught. And so that woke so many people up. Like I said, 1.5 million families pulled their kids out of public schools. So that momentum is growing. And, you know, people are starting to innovate and come up with new curriculums and come up with all sorts of new, like micro schooling, I think is probably the most exciting solution.
Schooling?
Yeah, it's essentially like homeschooling, but you do it like, say the four of us, we have kids and we hire a teacher, or one of us becomes the teacher, and we all put our kids there at that one house. So it's kind of like collective homeschooling. Imagine it as that. And so we all kind of contribute to the salary of the teacher. And so we don't all have to homeschool, because most families in America can't homeschool, right? Yeah. So microschooling is a great solution. And that was really birthed out of the pandemic.
Whoa. Now, you know, it's also, I think about this a lot. You can quote unquote win the lottery, if you will, depending on where you're born and what your town is and what the situation is. There's problems in the whole system, to be clear, and you're doing a great job pointing that out. But like, my mom was a public school teacher, came up in the whole system, hated the teachers union, refused to be a part of it. So she was what's the term, like black pilled on that early or whatever. Good for her. But she taught it like an amazing public school. Like she taught at Council Rock in Pennsylvania, which I can't speak for that now, but like at the time in the 90s, like that was like a really fucking good school. And then like in my town that we lived in, they were doing heroin in the bathroom at like 11. And she's like, all right, well, I have one child, so you're going to private school. And I think that worked out a lot better for me than it would have there. But point being, you know, you have some places where even if I looked at it with the bullshit, like just standardized testing, I could look at one town where the standardized testing is like they're scoring a 500. And then another town over, which is being funded by the same fucking government, they're scoring 1100 or something like that. So it's also like you have different talent levels of teachers, different incentives levels of teachers, different places that are either prioritizing it with tax money or not.
Mm-hmm.
And parents also don't control. So like, how do we fix that too? Is it just purely like, be like, yo, we're doing full choice, school choice, or?
Yeah, they've done studies that showed school of choice overall brings the quality of education up the best out of anything. It definitely shakes things up initially, but I think there's probably studies we could pull up to check that out. Yeah, I mean, I think any time that you allow competition and you allow others to bring different solutions to the table, it ends up working out.
Yeah. Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.